Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Today I'll be teaching you the basics of Unity and we will make a few simple things. This video is for beginners and if you have more than a day of experience in Unity, this is probably not the tutorial that you would want to follow. For this tutorial there will be two programs we'll be using. Unity, as you could expect, and we'll also be using a source editor. In my case it will be Visual Studio. I already made this entire video, it took me an hour and it crashed, so I have to do it again sadly. If we open Unity Hub, you can press New and you can choose between a template. Let's pick a 2D game and let's call it Test, like the one I made here as well. We'll create it, you can choose where you want to put it, you can press Create, and it will slowly start the project. This will take a little bit because it's the first time you've ever opened it. Depending on how fast your PC is and if it's the first time, it will be faster or slower. Also, if your project is really big, it will also take longer. I'll come back to you once it's done loading up Unity. Okay, so that took a total of 1 minute and 20 seconds for me to load up. While we're here, I'll show you the basics of what everything is in Unity. If your Unity does not look like this, you might have a different version than me. Or if you go to Window and Layouts, make sure you are on the default layout. So everything will look the same for you as it will for me. This here, this is the scene. So this is everything you make. It's 2D. If you right click, you can move around. It's also in 3D. You can move around, but we're making a 2D game right now. So let's keep it in 2D. You can zoom in, move around with right click, as I said. Lots of things. This is your camera and your game. This is everything that the player will see when they're playing the game. You can start and you will automatically put into the game. You can pause the game, you can continue it again, step forward, and you can go back. You can stop it. If you start the game, my screen will turn orange. I did this because everything you do while in the game, while playing the game, it won't save. So if you change something in the settings, it won't save after you stop playing the game. You can do this by going to Edit, Preferences at the bottom, Colors, and Player Mode Tint. Make it any color you want. While you're here, let's go to External Tools and External Script Editor and pick your script editor. In my case, it's Visual Studio, because Visual Studio helps, basically helps you a bit with coding. You'll see that in a second. Let's explain this bottom. This is all of your project files. So you can make folders. You can make all sorts of things, different scenes, different sprites. We'll get to that in a second. Then, up here we have the hierarchy. This is everything that is at the moment in your scene. So, let's add something to our scene. Let's add a sprite, 2D sprite square. Make a square. You can drag it into the hierarchy and you'll see it here. You can also drag it into the game and it will be there. You can drag it, make it bigger. Yeah. You can also do the same thing by moving it up here in the transform. And then the position, the rotation, you can change the rotation of everything. See. You can change the position. You can even change how big it is here. You can make it 2. But for now, let's just keep it as it is. We can rename this and call it player. You can press F2 to rename or press rename. Let's also make a floor and let's call it floor. Now, if we start the game, you'll see that we indeed see the floor and the player. They don't do anything yet. We'll make them do something. First, we can go to main camera, background, and you can change the color of the background. Let's make it black. It will be... I like it more than the blue one, so I always make it black. Let's give the player a bit of gravity so he falls down. We can do this by adding a rigid body, and because we're working in 2D, we add a rigid body 2D. Seems obvious. Now if you start the game, it will fall down. Nothing will happen yet, because at the moment, both of these are considered a ghost, quote unquote. Let's actually give it a collider, so it will be able to fall onto things and hit them. We can add this by adding a collider. There's a lot of colliders, but because we're using a cube, let's add a box collider. You can change the collider here as well, but there's no need for that right now, because it's already perfect for us. Now, if we start the game, nothing will happen again. That's because this one is not a ghost anymore, but this one is still a ghost. So let's select the floor, add another box collider, and now if we start the game, you can see that it falls right on top. Let me open my script. Okay. Well. Okay. Now, if you start the game and go to your player, in rigid body, you can mess around with the gravity a bit, make it go up, go down. The higher the gravity, the faster it goes. As you can see, it clipped through the floor there. So that's basically how you make objects that interact with each other. You can press Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V to duplicate. You can make walls, as you can see. So right now I've basically made a really simple box and he can't escape. Always make sure you save what you do. So here you can see that it's not saved because of this little star. If you press Ctrl-S, it will save. You can also do this here. Save. Yeah. Let's start coding. You can make a new script by making a new C# script. We'll make a test. We can also drag this into our folder. And then you can just double click it and it will automatically open in the source editor you selected. You'll always get this. It will say void update and void start. Start is everything that happens before the game is actually played. So if you press play, the start function will run and it will do everything that's in here. And then it will actually start the game and show us the first frame. The update will happen every frame. So every time that something happens, that like a frame happens, we can say do something, and it will do that thing every single frame. Let's start by making a few variables first. A variable, like this, is basically a way to store information. There's multiple variables. You can have float 1. Floats are numbers with decimals. You can put as many numbers behind there, so like 0.001. It won't work. If you add an F behind it and specify that this is a float, it will work. At every sentence that you make, the end, you should finish it off with one of these. This will basically say, hey, this line is over. We could, in theory, do this. You see, this will still work. This is still the same line, technically spoken, but it's just not as pretty, you know. Okay, so a float is a number with decimals, then let's write that. Float has decimals. Then we have an integer. Those are full numbers. So let's call this float. Oh, float with a big letter. Let's make an int. And we can make this 1 or 2 or 5 or that. All of those will work. Just remember, it has to be a full number. If I make this 0.5, it won't work, even if I say that it's a float. Then we have a string. And a string is for, well, words and letters. You can make a string. String. And you can say hello, but you have to put this in here to specify that it's a string with these keys. You can write hello, and now this string will contain hello. There's a few more things. There's a boolean, a bool. This will just be true or false. So if we make a bool, we can say true. There we go. That's it. Then there's one more thing you can do with the variables. You can say private float. If you just write this, it's the same as a private float. This doesn't really matter. But if you make a public float, this will mean that even if you're in a different script, you can still access this float. You can still get the number. If you make it a public float, it will also show up in here, and you can change it in Unity. Then let's write something in the start function. We'll start with something really simple. Debug. We'll start with debug.log. Debug.log will basically write something down here in the console. The console helps you with error codes and things that are available, and just tests for yourself. Here, this says it's expected, line 24. So let's go to 24. Oh, as you can see, I did not enter the end. You can say test, or what we can do, because we have a string, which is already hello, you can just add the name of the string, even if it's a test string. You can just change whatever you want. You can add it in here. And now if we start the game up, let's see. If we start it, in here, we don't see anything yet. This is kind of dumb of me, because we haven't added this script to anything. You can add this script, you can add it here, you can drag it in here, you could even drag the script down here, and it will work. As you can see, this script is now in. Now if we start it, you can see that we got an hello. Yay! This is basically to test if your script works. If certain areas of your script work, you can add a debug.log. Now I'll teach you something about the transform.position. As you can see, transform position, this is 0, 0, 0. This is a vector 3. It's another variable. There's a vector. We can make a vector 2. Let's call it test vector 2. And we can say new vector 2. And then we can give it 2 numbers. That is because this is a vector 2 basically. The x and the y, 2 numbers. A vector 2 will be made of 2 numbers. You can also make it like a float in there. It will work. You can make a vector 3. That's the exact same thing, but with 3 numbers. This is more commonly used in 3D games because you also have a third. You also have the Z axis instead of the X and the Y. Now, in here, you can say in the start function, let's say that this is all the way over here, but every time we play start, we want it to be at 0, 0. We can do this by in the start function, write transform, just like here, transform, dot position, just like here. This will basically say this is equal to that, or that is equal to this. And you can set it to whatever you want. A transform requires a vector 2 or a vector 3. So we could use test vector 2. Now it will say transform.position is 0, 0. Or we could also write the entirety of this. Now every time that we start the game, the cube will go to 0, 0, even though it was somewhere else before. Now let's make it move. Wait, let's see. Yeah, okay, so that's basically the basics of transform.position. Let's make the cube move to the right. So we can say what we want to do, move right if we press the right arrow. How do we do this? We can make an if function. If. Then you have to add these brackets to say when. So if this, and then do something, you know? So whatever you say in here will have to be done. So if input, because we want an input from the keyboard, get key, because we want a key. You can write key code dot right arrow. And you can use anything you want. You can do escape, whatever. Right arrow is what we'll do. There's different ways to do this as well, but this is the simplest for now. Right now, I added this to the end of an if statement. But the if statement is ended now, but if something happens, it won't do anything. So in an if statement, you don't use these. You add these type of squiggly brackets to say if this, then this. So we want to transform the position if we want to move it, of course. That's pretty... I think you understand that. But we can't just say transform to there, because then it will teleport. So if we just do this, it will always go to 0, 0. But there's a way to solve this. Because you can always use transform.position. You can always copy this. .x. And now every single time this is run, it will ask for the position of the x. In our case, it will be 0 at the first time. This will change every single time. And then we can also do the transform.position.y. Now every single time it will ask for its current position. Then let's make a region real quick, just for it to be easier. You can make regions to just tidy stuff up of variables, and you can end regions by doing end region. You can close the entire region on the left. Look, it's clean. Let's make a speed variable because we want to determine how fast our character goes. We can make a public float speed. Oh, oops. We don't need to say anything because it's a public. Public means that other scripts can say what it is and access it. Plus, in here, if it's a public, we can say what it is in Unity. We don't have to write is 50. This is useful because sometimes you don't want to open the script, and you can just change it in here really simply. Let's change it to 0.001 for now. if we want it to move right, we have to add something to the x position. Because if we add something, it will go to the right. If we subtract it, it will go to the left. So if we add the speed that we just made, here, speed, it will basically say every time add this number. So if we start the game now, and we press the right arrow key, as you can see, it will move right. But this is really not the perfect way to do it, because update is every frame. But what if you have a good PC that runs a lot more frames? That's what time dot delta time comes in. Let's do speed times time dot delta time. This will make it consistent. Time dot delta time is the time between last frame and current frame. This will always make it the same speed, even if you have a really good PC. This is a really small number though, so if we make it this small, it won't move. So let's make it 15, let's make it 10. Now, if I start the game and I move right, as you can see, it will move. Let's make it even slower. Let's make it 5. Change the speed. It will move right. There we go. Now, let's also move it left. This is really easy. You can copy it, you can paste it, and then left arrow. And then instead of plus the speed, you can do minus the speed. Let's see, and if we start it now, we can move to the left and to the right. Really simple. What we can also do, instead of a player, we can, or instead of a cube, we could even make a circle. We can add a circle, we can call it player again. Let's make it a bit bigger, because it's a bit small, huh? And we can just simply drag our script onto the player again. The speed will be 0, but we can change that. So if we do this now, as you can see, it won't do anything because I didn't add the collider, circle collider, and the rigid body. You see, it works now. And because it's a circle, there's physics. You can even like make this rotate, and it will roll down. It will roll down the wall. You can move it to the right, left faster. Because of the physics, things can roll. I think that covers most of Unity's basics, of the basic things. I'll tell you one more thing about the if statement though. In the if statement, you can ask multiple things, not just the input. You can say, if, let's say, speed, if speed is 5, then do something. But this doesn't work. That's because now we say speed is 5. We have to say if speed is equal to 5. It's really weird. You have to use this. Now it will work. Now this will be is not equal to 5. So I'll write that down here. Is equal is not equal. And then we have this one is higher than. So if we use that, it will be if speed is higher than 5. And then we have if speed is higher or the same as 5. So this is higher than or the same. Or no, and no, or equal. You can do the same thing with lower, but that's the other way around. That's just how these keys work. lower, lower. And I think that that's most of these ones. You can always say 5 plus 2, 5 times 2, 5 divided by 4, 5 minus 2. You can even do speed minus 2. You can use variables and numbers in here. Also, we made a bool up here, a boolean. Bool is true. We can say if test bool, or bool, that's the name. If bool is true, this will automatically do it. We can do this. That will work, but there's no need for that because if already knows how this works. And this will be if is not true. So usually if this is in front of something, it means not. I think that this is most of the things that I would want to talk about with you. Let's do a little recap of everything that we should have learned. You shouldn't have, but the things that I explained. I explained everything that you see on this screen. The project, where all the files are, the hierarchy, the difference between the scene and the game. The inspector, you should know what the transform is, the scale. I explained you the basics of how all of this works. I showed you the different variables. I showed you how to make something public and adjust it in Unity. The start function, the update function. Let's make a really simple thing first. This is a function, the update is also a function. You can always make a function by just writing something saying test function. And now what you can do is you can add this anywhere. Now every single time that this is called, all of the code in here will run. So this just says do this. That's the function. You can make infinite functions. Let's see. You shouldn't, but I told you about the inputs, about all of the different things you can use an if statement for. Key code, the get key just repeats it while you press it. You can also do get key down, and this will only activate once you press it down, so not when it is down. This is if it is down, then do something. I showed you how to transform and change the position by making a new vector and saying the exact position it is, minus or plus a variable you made, and I explained what delta time does. I think that this should wrap everything up. I think I've also shown most of the basics in Unity, and I really hope that you've learned from this and that you can become good game developers. Not like me, because I've only just been doing this for half a year. If you have any questions, you can always message me on Discord, which I'll leave in the comments, or you can write a message in the comment section. I'll try to answer all of them. Well, for now, this has been it, and I really enjoyed making this, so I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye, it's been fun.